Okay, well, this is gonna be a project. All right, guys, so a couple of months ago, my mother-in-law came to me and said she wants the biggest fire pit possible. And being a good son-in-law, I decided I'm gonna make her one. So I started scrolling around Facebook Marketplace and found this huge silo that I was able to pick up for $300. It's definitely seen better days, but we're gonna be cutting this entire thing apart anyway, so that really doesn't matter. And the idea here is to make a smokeless fire pit, a grill, and a pig rotisserie all in one. Whew. Oh, man, that did it. Oh, can you guys still hear me? Now, when I started cutting this thing apart, I really didn't have a vision for it, but I did know that I wanted that middle section because of its cool lines. So after cutting about a foot off of the top, I worked my grinder around the bottom section, and with a little forceful persuasion, I was able to free that middle section that I needed. We got ourselves a fire pit. Check this out. So this is the bottom piece, and this can be its own fire pit along with that thing. So out of this thing, you could theoretically make up to 3 separate fire pits. So when I bought this thing, it was sitting outside and it was covered in rust. It looked like it was in decent shape, but I didn't know how good the metal really was until I started grinding and sanding on it. And luckily, it was in great shape. It was just surface rust. And surface rust, I can work with. After getting it all cleaned up, I brought it into the shop and started drilling the holes in the side for the metal pipes that I'm gonna be welding in. The idea here is to drill holes into those pipes and bring more air into that fire pit to allow that fire to have a consistent source of oxygen. And little did I know, by doing that, I was making this fire pit smokeless. More on that a little bit later in the video, but first, I gotta fix this mistake that just happened. Yep, I drilled a hole in the wrong spot. Sometimes I get so excited about something that I forget to double check things. And in this situation, I totally screwed up. But I still had that center part of the hole saw cut off, so I clamped it flush, laid down some fat bead welds, and after grinding it flush, it was like it never happened. That's one thing that I love about making stuff. You can make mistakes, and trust me, I make them all the time, but there's nothing that you can't fix. It's all about not letting it get to you and learning from your mistakes. And now I know how to fix a hole in the grill. Like that's ever gonna be useful in the future. Maybe it actually will be. Oh, that looks cool. Let's put it on a grill so we can actually put wood on top of it. I want to be able to keep the wood off of the base by a couple of inches, and this is going to allow more oxygen to be underneath that fire pit and burn hotter, but I also want the ashes to kind of drop down below the fire pit so you can later clean it out. So I got to make a grate. But before I can do that, I need to straighten out the sides by temporarily clamping in a straight piece of metal. After cutting off the top portion of the silo, it became a little flimsy at the top. So this is going to hold it in place until I can weld in the angle iron for the grate. Ha! We got ourselves a straight fire pit. Let's make it fire-worthy. So that angle that I welded in at the top is actually for the grilling grate, not for the firewood. But I needed to straighten everything out before I can proceed. But now I can put in that bottom section that's going to hold our bonfire. Now both the top and the bottom grate are going to be made out of 1-inch angle iron and going to be interchangeable. You're going to be able to take them out, clean them, or if we ever need a very large grilling surface to like handle 30 steaks or something, we can take both of these grates and put them on the top and just stick charcoal or wood underneath it and cook everything at once. After welding up both of the frames for the grates, I needed to line them with a sheet of expanded metal that's been split and stretched to a diamond shape. This is what the wood is going to sit on, and also as a grilling surface for my world famous burgers. It's a family secret recipe, so don't ask, because I won't give it up. My mom would be mad. Now, because that top grate is going to be able to slide and be removable to access that fire pit underneath, I wanted to make some handles so that Grandma can easily grab it and pull it out. So I cut a couple of pieces of solid 3/8 round stock, welded in a couple of spacers, and welded it onto that grate. And because I typically design my projects on the fly as I build them, I decided that I'm going to put it in a lip around the entire grill to strengthen everything up. But didn't realize that I wouldn't be able to take out that top grate anymore. So to rectify that, I decided to cut a slot in the side of the grill, and that way I can pull that grate out without having to lift it from the middle. Got myself on fire again. Hello, I'll take it. Check this out, this just came in too. We're going all out with this one. Pancakes. So this somehow will swivel somewhere over here and you'll be able to make pancakes because I like pancakes. After welding in the lip, I started working on the handles for this monstrosity. And this time I wanted something that's really bulky and stiff. So I'm using 5/8 inch solid round steel. Sometimes we may want to move this thing around, and having a sturdy handle is definitely needed on this thing. Next, I moved down to the bottom of this pit, and I bought a piece of 1/8 inch steel to weld in its place. Now, I do have to worry about water drainage with this thing, so I decided to drill a 1/2 inch hole in the middle and cut off the corners of it. This way, when it's all welded in place, the water will flow through the angles and the sides and right out those corners. Not only does it serve as water drainage, but it also introduces more oxygen into the fire pit, making it smokeless. So a smokeless fire pit works by combining 3 elements: sufficient oxygen, ample heat, and equality of fuel. And the addition of these pipes with holes in them allows for secondary combustion to occur, which burns off particulates to smoke before they can escape out of that pit and follow you all over the place as you're sitting around the bonfire. Drill holes in the legs, weld in a shaft that'll take this under the leg. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And initially, this was not my plan. I wasn't thinking of making it smokeless. I just wanted to add some more oxygen for that pit to burn better. But like Bob Ross said, we don't make mistakes. We just make happy little accidents. And this accident is awesome with the way it works. And yes, it makes me happy. All right, guys, so we got this thing all welded up. We got the base on, and I think the structure's pretty much done. And now we got to start putting on all the bells and whistles that'll make this thing pretty cool, right? But then I got to thinking that this thing is super heavy. And how is Grandma gonna move this thing around if she wants to get it from one side of the yard to the other? There's no way, right? So, came up with rims. We're gonna give Grandma some rims so she can kind of, roll around like a gangster with her fire pit. Let's fabricate some axles. These tires are just your standard wheelbarrow replacement tires, but they fit perfectly over a 1/2 inch steel rod. So that's what I'm going to be using for my axle, and I just need to make some brackets that the shaft can slide through. And these wheels are just for rolling the pit around. They're not going to be attached when the fire is going because it would probably melt them. So they need to be removable fairly easy. The idea here is to weld those little brackets that I made to the pit and then be able to slip that shaft through it and mount the tires and secure it with a cotter pin. But in order for them not to hit the sides of the fire pit and slide around when being moved around, I need to make a spacer that keeps them in place offset from the pit. And I didn't have any hollow tubing that fit perfectly over that shaft, so I found a piece of 1-inch stock in the shop and welded a piece of metal on it with a 1/2-inch hole. This way it will slip perfectly onto the shaft and work as a spacer to keep the wheel from sliding around. Pretty sweet. Bottom and these. Let's do that. All right, so what I'm trying to do is actually mount this thing, because if you're having a fire pit, you don't need this grate. This is the grilling grate that's right on top. You don't need that in the way. So to kind of keep it all together like a kit, I think we'll just make a space for it to sit back here so it's not in the way. After getting the grate attachment welded in place, I wanted to mount a piece of wood that I've been using to hold up the fire pit during tire changes, kind of like a jack in a NASCAR race. This way it's not going to get lost or even burned. So I welded in 2 bolts and drilled corresponding holes into the wood leg. All right, it fits. Now let's make this thing into a leg or something. There we go. Got a leg. I'm kidding. This ain't it. This is for another project that I'm doing, but maybe something. Nah, we're gonna go simple. We're gonna go simple. It's gonna work. You can put a pot in here. What do you think? You got the ribbed side and the pancake side. Swing right over it. I love me some pancakes. For the swivel grilling grate, I want to be able to make it removable as well. So the only thing that I can think of was welding a bar to the grate and having a hollow tube with a hole at the bottom of it for water drainage that the bar can insert into and later be removed. Luckily, the 5/8-inch bar fit perfectly in between the slats of the grate. Then I can weld in that hollow tube onto the grill and slip the grate shaft into it. This is really cool. I love pancakes, but what I love more than pancakes is bacon. And yes, you could totally do bacon on here, right? But what if we did an entire pig? Incorporate a pig roast into this thing. Let's go. Okay, so the pig roast portion of this. Now, this was not a pre-planned thing. I wasn't planning on building it into this fire pit. But one day, Honey Bunny came into the shop with a plate of bacon. And we were kind of laughing about it. And she said, what if you turn this thing into a pig roast? My mom would probably really like it. But then she looked at me like, yeah, you're not going to do it. You're crazy. But I think she knew that if she brought me a crazy idea, it's going to happen. So we need to fabricate a removable attachment that the pig rotisserie and motor and everything else that kind of is involved in this thing, it can sit on. And I think this 1/8-inch angle is thick enough to support everything. But before we do that, let's take a minute to thank the sponsor of this build, DAP. Now, as you can tell, I'm a huge fan of all DAP products, and I have been for years. Everything from their wide variety of caulks, spackles, and wood glues. But what most people don't know is that they also have a wide variety of concrete repair products. And with our house being over 30 years old and nothing's ever been touched on it, we have quite a few cracks that need attention, but most of them are in our sidewalks. And their best product to use on that is their powder concrete crack filler. All I had to do was make sure that that crack is clean and dry, cut a 45-degree angle on the applicator tip, and fill the void, slightly overfilling it. Then I can level the surface, feathering the edges, and lightly mist the area with my garden hose. That's pretty much it for it. That's how easy it is. And within 4 hours, we were able to walk on our sidewalk. And I even fixed the cracks in our foundation with their all-purpose adhesive and filler. It's perfect for overhead and horizontal surfaces and is even moldable. It has a high cure rate of 1200 psi, and it can even be applied underwater, which is perfect for applications around pools and on rainy days. Now these two are the ones that I'm currently using around the house, and I'm gonna have a link in the description below. But DAP has a wide variety of concrete repair products for any crack that you may have around the house. So make sure you guys check them out. Thank you, DAP, for supporting what I do. Now let's get back to finishing this rotisserie. After building up the support with 1-inch square tubing, I need to make a mount that's going to house the motor that turns everything. And this motor I was able to get on Amazon for 80 bucks, and they say it can rotate up to a 200-pound pig. And I'm not gonna be telling Grandma that you can actually do that, but I wanna make sure that this mount is strong enough so that there's no movement when it's rotating that shaft. All right, so I got my bracket all fabricated, and this will sit in there. There's gonna be a bolt, it's gonna hold it. And now we have to figure out how to mount it. I don't want it directly on here like so, because there's a coupling that goes on top of here and it's gonna hit this bar here. So, yeah. This never happens. So I was only wanting to make sure that I was level there. I nailed it there too. And I think this one is the more important one, because that take your rod this way. This one really doesn't matter because, you know, it's a circle. Should be good. Now we got to drill a hole in here. All right, so I just clamped a rod into here and it's still boogies. So I think the idea is to make some sort of bracket here that attaches to this. That way it'll keep both of these completely stable. Alright, so I got a bit of a problem. Well, actually I have two problems. This is the coupling that sits on the motor, and this is what actually turns my shaft. And this is a very expensive piece of shaft steel, and it's supposed to slip on there like so. However, my shaft is too big for this coupling that came with the motor. I really don't want to modify this coupling. Now, I don't have a metal lathe, which would be super easy. You just put it on there and you take off, you know, a couple thousandths. Meeny. And this thing will slip on there, no problem, right? I think I can somehow grind or sand it down, because we're almost there. It's like, but the other issue is that when you slip this through, this pin right in here, it protrudes through. It sticks out in there. Ideally, to make this thing work, you want that shaft to be hollow on the inside, so it kind of goes around this. I don't know what to do. I don't want to cut this, and I don't want this thing like just barely sitting on here. I want it to sit all the way on. That's how it was designed. So, Getting the coupling onto the shaft was fairly simple, just a little bit of sanding all the way around that shaft and drilling a depression hole for the set screw so it won't slip. But getting the hole drilled out for the motor shaft, well, that was a whole different story. This shaft steel is super hard and it took forever, but after a lot of yoga drilling positions, I would say, I was able to get it mounted. And I can move on to leveling the motor and getting the spit mounted. That's what the shaft that the pig turns on is called, a spit. A spit. Well, it's a new word for me. And to make sure that that spit moves freely on the other end, I grabbed a couple of bearings and welded in a nub to the plate I made. And then I can slide the bearings over it. We're dead on. Like, you can't get any better. Still gotta figure out how to mount the pig onto here. I ended up getting some 1/4-inch stainless steel rods and I cut them to 10-inch pieces. Then I can heat them up with my torch and bend them 90 degrees. Now to make this skewer work, I need to weld them onto a slip ring with a set screw that I made, and I never welded stainless steel before. I guess you're supposed to use a different setting and wire on the welder, but I was running really late with the timing of this build and I just needed to get it welded. So I used my regular welding settings and somehow it turned out like something. All right, they're not perfect, but this will hold a pig. Guys, I almost forgot about this thing. This is the leg. It's the last thing we have to do. Let's do some turning. I need some woodworking. Alright guys, so that is it. The fire pit is done and I think it turned out great. It's not 100% smokeless, but it definitely helps. So we had a bonfire a couple nights ago and there were a bunch of people sitting all around it. We didn't have any issues. Like today, it's a pretty windy day, so the smoke is kind of coming out, but other than that, we absolutely love it. So the pig roast was a lot of fun. It was my very first time doing a pig. Turned out great. Everyone had plenty of food to eat and nobody died from food poisoning, so that's always a plus. Now I love using recycled materials in my projects, and this is just another example of what you can do if you throw a little creativity in there and some sweat, blood, and tears, and you can come up with pretty much anything you want. So we haven't had a chance to test the grill portion of it, but as soon as Grandma gets some steaks thrown on there and some hot dogs, I'll be sure to share that with you guys on Instagram, so stay tuned. Thank you so much for joining me on this experience. I'll see you guys next time.
Come on, you've seen Bart with his shirt off.
Nope. Uncle Johnny, where are you going?
No interview for me.
Talk to me.
Starburst? or Twizzlers?
Starburst all the way.
Why?
Two. Twizzlers have one flavor. Starbursts have multiple.
Somebody shut him up.
I want your sweatshirt burned. That'd be funny.